Hello, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now. This is the News Hour and I am Heena Gambhir joining you this Monday evening. Viewers, the three people captured together in these pictures that we are now going to show you represent a new rising axis. Every handshake, every hug, every huddle is going to continue to be scrutinized for a very long time. The body language, the timing and the statements that followed. In fact, the last 2 days in Tianjin in China saw what it looks like when a fresh world order emerges. And if pictures are to go by, it is clear that India is an equal part stakeholder, not someone's ally in the new scheme of things. And the credit for this booster to Bonhomie between Prime Minister Modi, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping goes to tariff master Donald Trump. Because who could have imagined that Delhi and Beijing would declare that they are partners and not rivals, especially after what happened at the borders that India shares with China as well as Pakistan?
They both agreed that the two countries were primarily focused on their domestic development goals, and in this they were partners rather than rivals.
And viewers, after the unusual camaraderie came the even more unusual spontaneous carpool between Modi and Putin. The two turned heads as they shared an unplanned ride to the venue of their bilateral talks, adding an extra hour to the conversation that Indian Prime Minister called insightful.
Оказывается, Владимир Путин и премьер Индии Нарендра Моди вместе решили ехать в одном автомобиле. И это вот то, что произошло прямо на наших глазах. Это решение принято несколько минут назад. Никто об этом не знал.
The protocol-busting ride is a not-so-subtle statement of defiance just days after United States of America doubled tariffs on India to 50% as punishment for buying Russian oil. Perhaps watching from Washington, Trump has said that the relationship between India and the US had been a total one-sided disaster. Shared grievances over Trump's tariffs and have, in fact, helped carve out common ground. Something that could lay the grounds for long-term resistance to US president, which perhaps may be the reason why others in his team are striking a rather conciliatory note. In fact, amid the photo ops at Tianjin, US Embassy in India posted a quote from US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, hailing the friendship between people of India and United States of America as the bedrock of their ties, and acknowledging the potential of their economic relations. And that brings me to the legitimate question tonight, the Motorola legitimate question that we are asking. Tianjin reset is equal to taxing times for Trump? That's the legitimate question we are asking on this debate number 1 on the News Hour tonight.
You're watching the News Hour at 9, debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
Joining us on this debate this evening is Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow at ORF. We also have with us Dr. Sergei Markov, former advisor to President Putin. And in just a few moments from now, we are going to be joined by Dr. Jeffrey Gunter, former U.S. ambassador. Good evening to both of you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us here on Times Now, the News Hour this evening. Mr. Sushant Sareen, I want to ask you, when you look at these pictures of, President Putin, President Xi and Prime Minister Narendra Modi in China, do you think these perhaps would be giving sleepless nights to Donald Trump? Because we haven't really seen any big reaction coming in from there, except the one that Peter Navarro gave, which we'll talk about a bit later.
Actually, a reaction has come. We have a Truth Social post from President Trump, and he seems to have piped down a little bit. And I can't say whether it's in response to the kind of rebalancing that we have seen in China right now, but it very well could be, and also because within the American system, a lot of voices have been raised about how the Trump administration is conducting its diplomacy, its relationship with other countries, especially with India. How, almost 30 years of efforts to bring India and the United States closer together have been undone by the kind of obnoxious remarks that arsonists like Peter Navarro and others are making. So clearly something seems to have moved. But whether the Americans or the current administration is going to spend sleepless nights, I can't say with any degree of certainty right now. Also, I think we need to be careful that while there is a rebalancing taking place, with Russia, we've always had very close relations. With China, there have been ups and downs. We are probably going on to an upswing right now. We'll have to wait and see how that works out. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's understand that India cannot suddenly turn around and say, look, we want to have nothing to do with the West. They are very important allies or partners of India in the economic domain and to some extent even in the strategic domain. And it's not an option for us to say, okay, fine, now we choose, the non-Western bloc and tomorrow we choose the Western bloc. We will have our task cut out for us. Of course, it will also depend on how the West behaves. If the Americans were to, climb down from the high horse that they've climbed on, then of course I think, some of the bitterness that has surrounded the relationship with the United States will be probably reduced. But if the Americans were to double down and start leaning on Europe and other countries to continue putting pressure on India for something that they're blaming India wrongly, then of course, all bets are off on how this relationship will unfold.
Okay, interesting views there. Dr. Gunter, by remaining defiant, hasn't Prime Minister Modi demonstrated that India can't be intimidated? India is not going to accept bullying at all. And after seeing what we saw in Tianjin in China, the three big leaders coming together, the photo ops, the optics of that entire meeting, the summit, etc., do you think there is going to be some kind of a rethink on cards, as Mr. Sushant Sareen also suggested within the Trump administration? Otherwise, why would suddenly, on the same day, U.S. Embassy posting out a post on X, in fact, talking about India-US partnership, saying that, how the partnership continues to reach new heights?
Well, it absolutely does, and it is. And I would commend your great Prime Minister Modi. He showed flexibility, and I have no problem conceding that, because President Trump is the president of the peace. And just like he wants America great again, by all means, India has to, become great again under the leadership of Modi. But let's not fool ourselves. When you see Modi and Putin get into a limo together, what does that tell you? It tells you that the great shadow over the SCO is Donald J. Trump and the American relationship. In fact, at times, when I watch some of this, I thought it should be called the TCO. I think it should be called the Trump Cooperation Organization, because what you're seeing is a great influence, strength, and power by President Trump, setting examples of new diplomacy. And that is exactly what Modi is engaging in. And like I've said on your show all along, at the end of the day, we're going to see an amazing summit at some point with Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi taking a ride together. Why? It's shared values, it's shared beliefs, it's love of democracy and freedom. This is not about bullying. This is about negotiation. And let's face it, there's still very deep issues of conflict between China and India. And if you don't agree with me, let's examine those brave soldiers of India who passed away during your border skirmish. This is not a light matter. There's tough issues that have to be negotiated with India and China. There's tough issues going on with Putin in Russia.
Right.
Your best friend amongst all those guys is America, and you watch. It's going to happen.
Okay, you're hopeful. I'm quite happy to hear your views. Interestingly, you say that this is not bullying, this is negotiation. Yes, you're right. Donald Trump is using pressure tactics to coerce India into accepting what it does not want to. It wants, like, Donald Trump wants to make America great again. For India, it is Indian interest, national interest that comes first. The message has been absolutely clear. But like you said, that it should actually be renamed as TCO instead of SCO. I want to go across to Dr. Sergei Markov as well. How will you like to respond to what Dr. Gambhir has said?
First of all, I think it's not just negotiation, but it's also bullying. It's clear. And it's on this level, I think Prime Minister Modi wants to show that he doesn't want to allow to another big power such as the United States of America to behave with great India, who is country and civilization also, to treat India as so-called neo-colonial, subordinated country. No, Prime Minister Modi insisting that India will follow own policy and we will not change it under the pressure. And I think that President of Brazil expressed also opinion of most of the such leaders when he told, oh, we respect Donald Trump, but he's President of the United States of America, but he's not Emperor of the global world. And it's the message of of all countries which they want to send to the Donald Trump, but mostly up till now it's for India and for China, because they are under the very big pressure, and the message to them from Washington is very simple. Don't buy the oil from Russia, nevertheless it's profitable for you, but it's only because we demand you not to buy this Russian oil. I'm sure, absolutely sure, that India and China and Brazil, by the way, response will be, well, sorry, please take another turn. And this is another level of such a discussion. And I think India and China and Brazil wants not only to give response to the United States of America and to Europe as well, who's also behaving quite aggressive, but also they want to build new community, new international community. And it's exactly was expressed as idea of President Xi during this meeting. He told, we need some kind of more integration of the country where all nations, all countries will be respected. And we need to have more cooperation on those levels. We see, what we see, this world, international order, has been constructed by Western countries. But now their leadership collapsed. I'm sorry, who believe in words of the Western countries about democracy if they support absolutely clear undemocratic Ukrainian regime? No trust, no moral no moral values, and no moral influence of such countries. It's the reason of why another countries come to see, because it's not because Western countries bad countries. No, it's because Western countries not able to be leaders of this international order. That's why another countries has to take part more active role. If Western countries respect own values, probably another countries will accept this international order. But if they have neo-colony style, if they sharply violated own values, another countries has to play more active role. And this is the reason of Shanghai Cooperation Organization exists. It's the reason of BRICS to exist as well.
Okay. Mr. Sushant.
Right in there, please?
Yes, go ahead.
But when your esteemed guest, the doctor, talks about neo-colonialism, for me, the great definition of neo-colonialism is watching Russian troops pour into Ukraine, who started the conflict in the first place. Don't get me wrong. The relations between America, let's face it, Donald Trump has great respect for Vladimir Putin. He has great respect for Xi. He has great respect for Modi. But when you see your esteemed guest talking about neo-colonialism as they pour troops into Ukraine and begin this conflict, claiming that somehow they're going to liberate the country, that's taking it a little bit too far.
Okay. I think Dr. Sergey disagrees with what you're saying.
Let me give a quick response.
Okay, quick rebuttal there. Dr. Sergey, yes.
Yeah, quick response. It's exactly what Vladimir Putin told today. He told this conflict started not in 2022 when Russia had to send its troops. This conflict started in 2014 when Western countries overthrown a last democratic elected president of Ukraine in a post-neo-colonial repressive regime. And Russian troops come to Ukraine to take out neo-colonial regime. Russia against neo-colonial regime. Russia wants to liberate Ukrainians from those neo-colonial regimes. That's why most of the global South countries support indirectly Russia in such conflict, because these countries know who is the real engine of the neo-colonialism. It's Western countries, but not Russia.
Right. Dr. Gunter, quick response, then I'll go across to Mr. Sushant Siri.
My response is, I'm sure all three of us on this program can agree that we want the killing to stop. We want Ukrainians not to die. We want Russians not to die. And we want peace in the region.
Well, we can say, Mr. Sushant Siri, one thing is clear. One thing that Donald Trump wants is recommendation for a Nobel Peace Prize. And I think he's not been able to, bring peace in any part of the world so far. He claims to have actually achieved that. But now it seems the way he has brought together three big leaders, the pictures are being shown to our viewers on the screens. Perhaps for this, he really deserves a recommendation. Will you agree, sir?
No, I would. But in any case, look, I personally think the Nobel Peace Prize is overrated. I cannot for the life of me understand why someone who has probably received the greatest honor in the world, which is to be elected President of the United States, hankers for a prize like the Nobel Peace Prize, which, a lot of unworthy people have gotten. So I cannot understand this obsession of the man. I don't know, maybe Dr. Gunter can understands it. Secondly, I don't agree, on this neo-colonial thing, nobody's hands are clean. It's not as though the Americans have not interfered in other countries and not resorted to regime change, not gone into sovereign countries and tried to effect changes out there in the name of liberating them and virtually destroying those countries. Iraq is a prime example. And we've seen other Western allies, what they did in Libya. I'm certainly not saying the Libyan dictator was a really nice guy. But I think what Libya was under him was probably far better than what Libya is today. Or Syria under Assad compared to giving it to Al-Qaeda people. Third, Mr. Gunter, I think, he has forgotten not too long back, just about 2 weeks back, we also saw the scenes of Mr. Putin and President Trump drive together in the same car. So when he takes a pot shot at us, why Modi and Putin are going in the same car, frankly, it doesn't quite add up. And then finally on this whole issue of pressure. Listen, there are ways and means of putting pressure. You do this publicly to self-respecting people, self-respecting countries. Yeah, maybe you can do this to Pakistan and they will be more than happy to, play that role. They are mercenary state anyways. You throw a few $1 billion at them, they'll jump and do whatever you ask them to do. I'm sorry, we are not like that. So you have to understand what are the kind of countries you are dealing with. And finally, on something which Dr. Markov said, I understand the sentiment, I respect it of this new international community coming into place. But I think it's a bit of a stretch at this point in time. I think what has happened in Tianjin is good in the sense that there's been some amount of rebalancing. If we've tried to cool temperatures on our borders, re-engage with the Chinese, which others have been doing, I don't see a problem in that. But does this mean that we are getting into a completely new bloc.
Right.
I think it's not going to get into bloc politics any which way. And I don't think it serves India's interest to get into bloc politics. And the last point, Heena, if you allow me, on the negotiations again, India has already given virtually all that it could to the Americans. The draft of that trade deal was on Donald Trump's table, and it was there because the American trade negotiators are themselves surprised at how flexible India was in offering trade concessions to the Americans.
Right.
But there will be certain red lines in India which we cannot afford to cross. Maybe in 5 years, 10 years from now, we could reform some of those sectors. But at this point in time, there are some no-go areas. And no matter how much pressure the Americans put, I don't see how any democratically elected government in India can give in on those.
Right. I think you've hit the nail on the head. Trump hosted Putin in Alaska. America and China are on the verge of finalizing a trade deal. That on tariff front, there is a pause there. So why should Trump, via his aides and himself, be lecturing India and dictating where should India be doing business and whether it should be buying oil from Russia or not? I mean, that's the moot point here. And like Dr. Gunter also said, that these are negotiations that are underway. So clearly we have to see every move coming in from United States of America as perhaps an attempt to coerce India to agree to what America wants. Why should we? We don't believe in deadlines. The UK FTA took about 3 odd years to get finalized. Can't pressure us. The message has been absolutely clear. Thank you very much, Dr. Gunter and Dr. Markov, requesting Sushant Singh to please stay on with us as we move on to our next important subject that we are discussing on the News Hour this evening.